Child labor, filthy slums, corrupt politics. As the 20th century dawned, America was a nation of contradictions. But a wave of reformers, journalists, activists, and presidents set out to change that. This was the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era lasted roughly from 1890 to 1920. It responded to problems from the Gilded Age: inequality, exploitation, urban poverty, and corrupt politics. Reformers believed government should be more involved in fixing society. This era laid the foundation for many modern American institutions. The media became a weapon for change. Muckrakers were investigative journalists who exposed injustice. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, 1906, revealed unsanitary conditions in meatpacking factories. Ida Tarbell exposed the monopolistic practices of Standard Oil. Lincoln Steffens wrote The Shame of the Cities, exposing corruption in urban governments. Their work outraged the public and forced reforms. Activists worked to improve life for all. Settlement houses like Hull House, founded by Jane Addams, helped immigrants with housing, childcare, and education. Child labor laws began to emerge. Temperance movements aimed to reduce alcohol abuse. Public health improved. Better sanitation systems. Campaigns against tuberculosis and unsafe water. Education reform expanded public schools and introduced kindergarten. These efforts reflected a belief that poverty wasn't a personal failure, it was a social problem. Women's rights and the suffrage movement. Women played a major role in reform. Leaders like Susan Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Alice Paul fought for women's suffrage, the right to vote. The National American Women's Suffrage Association, or NASWA, pushed for voting state by state. More radical groups like the National Woman's Party used protests and hunger strikes. Finally, in 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote across the U.S. Progressive presidents. 3 U.S. presidents embodied the progressive spirit. Theodore Roosevelt, 1901 to 1909, fought trusts and monopolies, known as a trust buster. Passed the Pure Food and Drug Act and Meat Inspection Act. Protected national parks and forests. Believed in the square deal, fairness for workers, consumers, and businesses. William Howard Taft, 1909 to 1913, continued trust busting and improved regulation, more conservative than Roosevelt's, which caused a split in the Republican Party. Woodrow Wilson, 1913 to 1921, introduced the Federal Reserve System, enacted the Clayton Antitrust Act, supported labor rights and child labor laws. These presidents expanded the role of the federal government in everyday life. Political reforms. Progressives changed how democracy worked. Initiatives and referendums allowed citizens to vote directly on laws. Recall elections gave voters power to remove corrupt officials. The 17th Amendment, 1913, allowed direct election of U.S. senators. Efforts to break the power of political machines, especially in cities like New York and Chicago. These changes empowered the average citizen. Despite many achievements, the Progressive Era had flaws. Racism persisted. Many reforms ignored African Americans, Native Americans, and immigrants. Jim Crow laws remained in full force. Presidents like Wilson were segregationists. Progressive movements often excluded Black leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois, who advocated for civil rights and founded the NAACP in 1909. Still, the era set the stage for the civil rights movement decades later. The Progressive Era left a deep mark on America. Cleaner cities, safer food, new rights for women, and a more active government. But the work of justice was far from over. In the next chapter, America would be tested like never before in the trenches of World War I. End of Part 9. Coming next, Part 10, World War I and America's rise as a global power.